Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to our very first infant and toddler mental health webinar. We are going to be talking about impacting infant and toddler behavior through language today. My name is Melissa Smith, and I'm the infant toddler mental health consultant in the North Central and Valley region.
Hi, I'm Tina Castro, and I am the infant and toddler mental health consultant for the Northern region. Together, along with a few others, we provide on-site coaching and assessment for social emotional development, fostering nurturing relationships in child care centers and family day homes. Today, during the webinar, we will be able to understand the benefit of telling young children what to do when directing behavior. We will create early childhood environment rules that effectively identify expectations. And lastly, we will utilize descriptive language when delivering commands and praise. By participating in this webinar, we can reflect on the language that is commonly used with children. Consider what expectations are being set for the children in our care settings and how those expectations are expressed, and consciously choose words and phrases that are more positive and more likely to help children understand what it is we are asking of them, and ultimately encourage them to be more likely to comply. We will be looking at how to change our language from simple to specific, passive to assertive, judgmental to descriptive, and from negative to positive. Simple commands refer to short commands or instructions that do not rely information about the action or alternatives, such as, "Stop that." Passive commands mean that often, in an attempt to sound friendly or nice, we provide what we think are commands, yet end them with phrases such as, "Okay," or asking children to comply by saying, "Are you ready to?" or "Can you please?" Judgmental commands refer to assigning value statements to our feedback on children's behavior. Common phrases that express judgment include, "Good job," "That was so nice," or "You're being mean to your friends." Negative commands in this context means that we are more likely to focus on what we do not want the children to do. This can include rules such as no running, no hitting, no climbing, etc. Before we go any further, we're going to go ahead and take a few moments to do a poll. So the poll that we're going to be asking is, how do you share your expectations? Do you verbally tell the children? Do you use pictures of acceptable and unacceptable behaviors? Do you use a chant or a rhyme? Do you do all of the above? Or maybe something different? Go ahead and take a few moments to answer the question, and I'll get back with you in just a moment to share the results. Wow, it looks like we're getting such a diverse option, or answer to that question. Great. The first step in impacting the behavior of young children is to clearly set expectations. We often develop a set of rules or expectations in order to guide behavior. Take a moment to reflect on the expectations in your classroom or care environment. How do you ensure that the rules or expectations are clear to your students? Do you have a list written on chart paper? Do you verbally tell them the rules? Are there pictures of acceptable versus unacceptable behaviors posted around the environment? Do you have a class chant or rhyme that reminds students of the rules each day? Also consider the consistency of these expectations. Are these rules or expectations addressed every morning at the same time? Are they given at times when children seem to be having a hard time remembering what the expectations are? Many times throughout the day, at the beginning of the year, and then occasionally throughout the rest of the year until the kids should know better? The language and methods we use to introduce and reinforce these expectations can greatly impact the behaviors we observe. In order to best support the children in our care to be successful in following the rules, educators and parents first must consider the way in which the rules are developed and presented. So there has to be some effective expectations. Positively framed means that is a command that can be framed in the language of what to do instead of what not to do. When directing behavior, children respond best when the language tells them what to do instead of what not to do. For an example, if a classroom rule is no running, consider what it is that we actually want the children to do. If the rule is simply no running, children might creatively find ways to move throughout the environment, such as skipping, crawling, spinning around in circles while moving in one direction. However, this may not be what we have in mind when we say no running. We are trying to keep the environment safe. This rule can be changed to walk in the classroom. This clearly states what behavior is expected, and the word walk means only one thing, walk. We can model what it looks like to walk safely and practice walking safely when the children so that they know exactly what that expectation looks like. Make sure our expectations definitely need to be developmentally appropriate. A toddler classroom may have the rule no biting, but unfortunately many toddlers do bite, and for various reasons. Though this behavior is not acceptable and should be addressed, this limit may be hard to enforce because of the developmental stage of the children and can be frustrating because now the children are not following our rules. Rules are set in order to keep order and safety in our environments, not to create restrictive environments. We can set expectations so that children are likely to be successful. Another example, setting the rule of we share. Sharing is difficult, even for adults. Though this is positively framed, it is not developmentally appropriate for children and toddlers. We can encourage sharing by developing our environment and help the children develop skills so that they might be more likely to share. Examples of this could be ensuring that there are multiple of the same favorite toys, assist in conflict resolution, saying, "He's not done with that. Can you play with this one while you wait?" and help children practice turn-taking during play. And also there should be few. Expectations should be few in number. Consider how it feels as an adult to walk into a situation or an environment in which the list of things you cannot do is long. You may feel nervous that we will be unable to remember all of the rules or uncomfortable that we have entered a very restrictive environment. A list of extensive rules invites the same feelings of discomfort and uncertainty in young children. The list of rules set in our environments should be brief and follow the parameters listed above. The rules and expectations chosen should be positively framed, developmentally appropriate, and few. They should also be crafted in the interest in keeping the classroom safe and calm rather than the focus of the adult having control. Let's look at an appropriate list of rules. Take a look at this potential list of environmental rules and that they meet the criteria of effective expectations. Positive, they tell the children what to do and can be modeled directly. They're not complex concepts. They are developmentally appropriate. Children will be able to follow these rules within their developmental range. And they are few. Now, there's only 3 rules. Also note that these set the environmental tone for your program. An environment of things the child can do, and also an environment of collaboration and kindness. Also note that the rules do not include items such as be nice or quiet mouth. Being nice can mean a multitude of things and requires a large skill set that toddlers are just beginning to understand. Quiet mouth may be appropriate for some situations, but definitely not developmentally. This may not be a general rule that is implemented in your environment. All right, now let's take a look at how we set up for success. In order for these expectations to be implemented most effectively, educators and caregivers can follow some steps to do so. Consistency. Decide what is and what is not acceptable beforehand. Having a clear and consistent framework of the rules of your environment before the children arrive. Decide on overall rules, expectations for how to engage in activities, sensory table, small group, nap time, and consistently enforce these expectations and behaviors. Visuals. Visuals can be a great way for children to conceptualize what the expectation is. Use clip art or pictures of the children in your care doing that behavior. Examples include lining up safely, washing hands, putting coats in cubbies, laying down at nap time, playing safely with blocks. Children are excited to see their own pictures, and this can be a way of showing the children how they have been and could continue to be successful. Modeling. It is important that we remember that every behavior that we expect from children should be taught step by step. When we expect children to do something like thoroughly washing hands or cleaning up messy toys, we can show them exactly what to do so that they can watch the action be done successfully, hear the instructions, and practice the task. This means when presenting the rule of walk in the classroom, we show the children what it looks like to walk safely and maybe hold their hands and walk with them around the classroom so that they can sense in their own bodies what it feels like to safely and successfully navigate the environment. For teaching gentle touch, we can guide the child's hand to show them exactly what is meant by gentle touch. We narrate the steps of the behavior while we are modeling and helping the children practice as well, so that they are more likely to remember what to do. Some non-examples. Older children can benefit from a visual rule list that has undesired actions with a red X or a sad face next to it. For infants and toddlers, adults can model hurtful or unsafe behaviors briefly by modeling the action and showing that it is undesirable. For example, an adult may pull a doll's hair, make an exaggerated sad face, and exaggerated shaking of their head, saying, "No! Ouch!" A non-example must be followed up with an example of how to appropriately complete an action, such as hugging the doll gently, smiling, and the adult nodding in an exaggerated way. All right, using language to shape behavior. Now I know that the brief list of rules, expectations, does not address many of the behaviors that educators and caregivers are likely to see throughout one day in working with infants and toddlers. The language used during moments of redirecting behavior, praising positive behaviors, or teaching new skills should be descriptive and build on the principles used for creating expectations, positively framed so that the children know what to do and developmentally appropriate. Consider a commonly used word to shape behavior. Stop! This might be said when a child is experiencing a variety of behaviors: crying, hitting, grabbing other children's toys, or running. When we say the word stop, we might be trying to convey one of several possible messages. Your actions are not safe. Pause. I feel annoyed when you do that. Your actions are hurtful to a friend. Come back here. It looks like you need some help. Put that down, etc., etc. Let's look at how our language impacts a child's behavior.
So we're going to be, just like Tina was just talking about, we're going to be looking at how our language can be expanded so that the children really understand what it is that we want them to do. So when using this language with young children, we might provide that simple feedback such as no or stop. And that can be a little bit confusing because toddlers in particular are really starting to develop their sense of self and gaining independence and exploring their environment. And they want to climb, they want to play with that one toy that they want, and they want to get their own needs met in that moment. And they don't yet have the skills to delay gratification or to consider how to accomplish that goal that they have in mind in an appropriate way. So when we give them simple feedback, they're not learning any new skills in how to meet those goals successfully. So we can use our language to help guide the children to develop these skills. So when we're talking about using specific language, it means that we can take a moment and try to understand what the child's goal or intention is. A behavior such as pushing is scary for adults because we want to keep everyone in our environment safe. But if we can take a moment before reacting to a behavior that we see as negative, we can provide some more guidance. So if we see a toddler hit a friend, we can take a moment to determine, is this child feeling angry, or are they trying to get their friend's attention, but they just don't have the motor skills yet to touch them gently on the shoulder. When they're trying to touch their friend, it just comes off as a big, solid whack. Or for a toddler that's pulling hair, is this child trying to get that other child to move out of the way and grab hair and try to get them to move? Or maybe they're trying to look at some pretty braids or barrettes in the hair and don't, again, have that control to touch gently. So taking a moment to better understand the behavior can help us address the situation with language that can help shape the behavior. And this can be hard when we have several young children in our care at once. We might not see everything that happened before the behavior, or we're worried about keeping all the children in our care safe. And it's not always possible to just sit back and observe all the children's behavior because we're very busy throughout the day. However, we can shift our view to consider what that child is trying to accomplish and provide descriptive language for their intention. For the child who's pulling hair, oh, you wanted to see Jessica's barrette, and help to guide that child to touch Jessica's hair gently or just look with their eyes instead of touching. For a child that's just hit somebody else, we can provide language. Oh, you wanted Jason to move. Say, move, please. And for toddlers, we can accept that they might not be able to say move, please, but they might have some sort of babble or verbal contribution. And we can accept that as their way of saying move, please. Using specific language requires that we really try to understand what the child is trying to accomplish and narrate their intentions as best we can. So we're going to look at more skills that adults can develop in their own language to use when directing or redirecting behavior in order to help the children best understand what's expected of them and how we can help them be more likely to be successful. Assertiveness is a very important skill in shaping behavior. Thinking about the manner in which we give instructions or commands can increase the likelihood that young children are going to comply with our instructions. So think back to the slide that Tina showed us that was a list of environmental expectations called our rules. And none of those rules were followed up with words such as please or okay. Those rules are presented in a tone of no doubt. These are the clear, firm boundaries of our environment. At times, though, when we are talking verbally with children, we may follow up that verbal command with one of these question words. So consider that when we add a question such as okay or please to a command, we might be trying to sound more friendly or nice, but this kind of command can invite a cycle of frustration for both the child and the caregiver. So let's look at how a command ended with a question may invite noncompliance. So if we are getting ready for nap time and we say, it's time for nap time, okay? Or something like, are you ready to clean up the toys? The child has now perceived that there's an option on the table of whether or not to comply. As adults, what we really mean is, I expect that you follow this instruction. But when we form that in a nice-sounding question, we might end up in a power struggle. So if you ask a child if they're ready to do something, they may honestly answer you, no, I'm not ready, or no, it's not okay with me to clean up the toys. And then we might get frustrated because the child is not complying. However, we don't realize that the child has been given the option to disagree. We then might feel frustrated and come back with something like, don't you say no to me, you get on your mat. And then the child becomes frustrated because they were offered an option, they made a choice, and now that choice has just been taken away. Now, it's important to note that assertiveness is different than aggressiveness. So aggressive language would be a caregiver who automatically says, get on your mat now, in that angry kind of growling voice. Whereas assertiveness is that firm language, but it's a combination of language that's both firm and kind. So let's take a look at the slide where we have the first command. It's time for nap time, okay? We can then shift that to an assertive command to say, it is time for nap. The caregiver, when we're using that language, it's not to sound angry or mean, so we can say it very kindly and firmly at the same time. Something like, are you ready to clean up the toys? Can just be shifted to, we need to clean up the toys. Or something like, can you please sit down? Can be shifted to, sit down in your seat. There is no doubt, this is what I expect from you. It's not a question. This is your expectation. And also note that words like please and thank you are very good manners, but when we're giving commands, the manners don't apply. We're telling the child what we expect from them. So in order to shift our language to be clear, firm, and supporting the child in success, we can focus on giving these assertive commands. And this can be hard to do. When we're making a conscious effort to give specific assertive commands, we might still ask, are you ready to, or end with okay? And we can always adapt to this situation. And we can accept that child might answer no. And some options might be, so if you say, are you ready to go potty? And they say no, we can just take a moment and realize what has just happened. And instead of getting frustrated, we can just say, okay, your turn to go potty will be next. So we've really just taken that situation and shifted it so that we're ending on an assertive command. Or if we say something like, are you ready to clean up? And they say no, you can respect that and say, oh, it sounds like you're not ready to clean up. You have 1 more minute, and then it's cleanup time. When we respect that response, yet come back to these assertive commands, we can divert that frustration loop that can happen within a power struggle. And if we do offer that, where we say, your turn to go potty will be next, or 1 more minute and then it's cleanup time, we need to make sure that we are absolutely following through with that. So either putting on a timer for 1 more minute or making sure that that child is the very next child to go potty so that the child learns that we mean what we say when we say it. So simply being aware of that language, sticking to what we say, and knowing how it impacts the behavior of children in our care can really make an impact on that behavior. Another way that we can work to encourage a child to be successful with a command is to offer them choices on how to do so. So let's discuss some guidelines on how to offer choices effectively. So if we're offering a child a choice, we need to limit the options that we've provided. Choices such as, what do you want to do next? Or how do you want to lay down? That can be overwhelming. There's now a lot of options on the table. And also, that leaves the door open for a child to choose something that we don't find acceptable. So if we say, how do you want to lay down? They might choose to put their feet up on the wall and their head on the mat or on the floor. Or asking, what do you want to wear today? Can leave you with a child wearing shorts, a scarf, and Crocs on a winter day. So we really need to make sure that these are two choices. So that leads us to these positive choices. So not only are they limited, they're going to be positive. And so what this looks like is we're going to offer two choices that are both acceptable. Is it A or B, this or that? And we, as adults, decide what we're going to offer, this one or that one, here or there. Again, there's only two choices, and these are the ones that you have to choose from. And the choices that we are offering are acceptable. So choice is not used as an ultimatum for following directions. So the choice is not either you listen to me or I call your mom. Either you clean up or you don't go outside. That's an ultimatum. We want choices that really encourage the child to be successful. So you can either choose A or B, this or that, and either way it's going to be something that helps you be successful. So what that looks like is it's time to clean up. Would you like to clean up the red blocks or the blue blocks? It's time to get dressed. Would you like to wear the striped shirt or the checked shirt? So you've chosen two shirts that are weather appropriate. You've chosen two things to clean up that are appropriate for the situation. We need to provide that choice, and either way, that child's going to be successful. And so finally, these choices are appropriate. Again, when we're thinking about nap time, do you want to lay your head on this side or on that side? Do you want to lay on top of the blanket or under the blanket? Maybe in a different situation, do you want to walk by yourself or do you want to walk with me? Do you want to play with the blocks or the dolls? You can have carrots or peas. Which would you like? So again, thinking about our situations that we're offering choices in, we as the adults are going to choose two options, A or B, this or that, and they're going to be appropriate to the situation so that either way, either choice that the child makes, they're being successful with the command that we've just given. And that's also going to help the child choose something that's desirable in that situation and avoid those power struggles. And providing choices also really empowers the child to be an active participant in their day. So children learn that they have power in the actions that they do, and that the environment that they're in is more than just a place of rules and regulations that must be followed in order to avoid consequences. The environment becomes a place in which they feel empowered and confident, and they learn the appropriate ways to interact with peers and their environment. So that leads us to talking about descriptive praise. When we think about shaping behavior, the first thing we often think about is addressing negative behaviors and making sure those negative behaviors do not occur again. An important yet overlooked piece of this oftentimes is praising the positive and successful behaviors that frequently occur throughout the day. So the early childhood environment can be a busy place where many behaviors need redirection and attention. Through providing positive and descriptive language when children are adhering to the rules and expectations, we can encourage the children to continue actions that keep the environment safe and calm. So let's take a moment to reflect on when we use praise most throughout the day. So just take a moment and look at this poll and take a moment to respond. And I want you to think about all the times throughout the day that you say, good job, or something like it. When do you give praise to children? Is it when they're following directions, acting kindly towards a peer, mastering a skill, helping another person, all of the above, or something different? So just take a moment to respond. Okay, so it looks like we're getting some different answers, which is really wonderful. Thank you so much for participating in that poll. So, again, thinking about the times that we say the words good job or provide praise of some sort, what we're seeing from this poll is that there's all different times of day, all different situations in which we would provide praise. And when we say something like this, like good job or provide other praise, it's most likely because we know how important it is to praise children frequently. But again, all of these situations are very different. So we want to show children that they're doing something good, whether it's following directions, completing that kind of action, or whatever it is. But if we just say something simply like good job, that provides a little information on what they just did that was successful, helpful, kind, or appropriate. So while we are sharing that praise with them, we're leaving out the description of what just happened to earn that praise. So in order to increase the likelihood that young children will repeat that desired behavior, the adults around them can begin to expand their own language to describe the positive actions that the child completes. So just looking at the phrase good job specifically, it doesn't provide any information on what the appropriate behavior was or how it accomplished a goal or effectively or positively affected the environment. But by providing praise in a descriptive, individualized manner, not only do we celebrate the child's success, contributing to their confidence and competence, we encourage the behavior to occur again because the child is aware of how to be successful next time. So thinking again more about praise, something that we also might say is, I like the way you're sitting. And this, just like the job, is being used to convey that this behavior is desirable, or often we use it to point out to children who are not following directions what behavior that we expect them to be doing, which we're showing them, oh, I like the way Janice is sitting. However, we do need to consider the message that this phrase could convey to children. When praise is delivered in this format, we're sending the message that compliance is pleasing to adults or others. And while it's absolutely true that there's inappropriate versus appropriate behaviors or acceptable versus unacceptable behaviors, we want to avoid praising children for completing actions or behaviors for the sake of being liked or likable. And that's most definitely not our intentions when we deliver praise in the way of saying, I like the way. But let's look at how it could impact children. So when children learn that they earn praise for things that adults like, it can encourage children to complete actions and then seek someone out to point out what they've done in order to earn that positive attention and praise. And this can be exhausting if we have to constantly provide praise to a child who is seeking that praise. And that child becomes less intrinsically motivated to complete kind actions or other behaviors for their own social successes. So it's important that we begin to think of praising children, not just to show our pleasure and excitement at child's success, but to convey, again, how that child has been successful. So if we shift our praise phrases to move from things like good job and I like the way, then we can refocus our praise to become descriptive. And it's effective descriptive praise draws the child's attention to to how their actions help them be successful, how it impacted a peer, or how it impacts an environment. So we're going to look at shifting our praise more specifically. So using descriptive praise and descriptive language can really help us shape children's behavior. Again, we want to point out to children how their actions impact others or the environment. And children begin to learn that their words are powerful and can accomplish their goals. So, for example, we have a child who did use their language, and so they wanted the child to move. So they wanted their friend to move, and instead of pushing, they said, "Move, please." So you go to that child and you say, "Wow, you said move, please," to Caden, and he moved so you could get by. So we're pointing out to exactly what the child said or did, in this case, what the child said to Caden and the impact that it had. You said move, please, and he moved. Or thinking about when we're praising a child for their ongoing behaviors. Instead of saying something like, "Oh, you're being so good today," we can shift that to say, "You're working really hard to make safe choices. I bet it feels good to keep yourself and your friends safe." In this situation, we're helping the child reflect on the inner state that comes with calmness and safety, instead of just saying generally, "Oh, you're being so good." When children are doing things that are really kind and nice, that's really exciting, and we want to praise them for that. But we can elaborate. So instead of just saying, "Oh, that was so nice," we can really use our descriptive language to draw out the details of that situation. So we can say, "You wanted to turn the truck, so you said, 'My turn,' and now you're playing with the truck." So we're taking away just the word nice. Yes, it was a nice, kind thing to do, but we really want to show the child what they've done to be successful. So we want to encourage the child to independently act using kind words and manners. So we take that time to point out what they did and how it accomplished the goal. And again, if we say things like, "That was so nice," take a moment and see if we can expand that language. How was it nice? "Oh, that was so nice when you saw that Bailey needed help with her coat, so you zipped it up for her. What a kind friend you are." Or if you see a child sharing, which we really want to encourage, because just like Tina said earlier, sharing is difficult. If we see a child independently share, we can say, "Oh, you shared your paint cup with Allie. That was so kind of you. Look at how she's smiling. It's so fun when we can work with our friends." So again, just really drawing out this language and looking at the situation and pointing out to the child exactly what happened, exactly what they did to accomplish that goal. And we can also use this descriptive language to acknowledge the effort that a child is putting into their work or interactions with others. So when we praise effort instead of the outcome, the child learns that it's valuable to keep trying even when a task is difficult. So when you see a child struggling to build that tall block tower, you can offer the phrase, "Wow, you're working so hard to build up your block tower." Or even for a child who's having a hard time remembering to use words during a conflict, we can even acknowledge that child saying, "You're trying so hard to let Landon know that you feel angry." And when we acknowledge the effort that children are putting into their actions, we can let them know that they don't always have to be successful. They don't always have to get it right to experience success. They can sort of struggle through it and not get it perfectly. And we're going to support them, and we're going to acknowledge that they're trying. They're working hard for it. So let's take a moment and look at another poll. And we know that this is hard, right? When we're thinking about shifting our language, we're thinking about a new skill that we're trying to build. It can be hard. It can be hard to do. So take a moment and just think, what do you think would be most helpful for you to shift your language? Do you feel like you need more time? Do you feel like you need more practice? Smart children, successful children? What do you think would be most helpful for you to be successful in using positive language? Okay, all right. Thank you so much for those answers. Yeah, so building the skills can be hard, and let's look at some maybe barriers that we might be facing. So when I ask you to think about what would be helpful, you probably have some thoughts or concerns about the language, shifting our language. So when we are thinking about intentionally shifting our language to be specific, assertive, descriptive, and positive, we might have some concerns. So let's think about the first one, time. I don't have time to notice all these behaviors and talk about it. Absolutely. We cannot just sit back all day and just deliver all these wordy commands and praise and sit back and think, oh, I wonder why this child is doing this, and that's all we do all day. But if we do make the effort to provide that clear, descriptive commands and praise, we'll start getting more in the habit of doing so, and therefore it's encouraging the children to repeat those positive behaviors that we witness. So just paying more attention to the language that we're using is automatically going to help us build it into our daily lives. How about this concern? This sounds ridiculous. No one did this for me, and I turned out fine. As you know, our knowledge about education and early childhood development is always evolving. So we now know that these are effective strategies for classroom management and relationship building. So even though perhaps our parents or our teachers or our caregivers didn't have these skills, you now have these skills and can share it with the children in your care. How about kids just don't understand this? And this is a very common concern, especially with us who are working with infants and toddlers. And it's true that infants and toddlers do not have the advanced language skills to fully comprehend all of this descriptive language, but we can still encourage their efforts and their successful interactions. And what children will understand is the clear expectations that you set, especially if we're looking at including modeling and pictures of acceptable versus unacceptable behavior. And children will understand your excitement, and when you're providing that praise, your excitement, and hear those words again that they've used. And they will begin to understand how their actions impact others and their environment. And also remember that heard language is learned language. So the more language we use, the more we're building these little ones' vocabularies. What about thinking, oh, some kids are just better than others at certain tasks? What's wrong with celebrating a child's success? And this especially is related to the idea of no longer saying something like, I like the way such and such is doing this. So it is absolutely true that some kids have more success than others, and that some children are more likely to behave appropriately than others. And we want to recognize that the children who are being successful, absolutely. However, we need to be sure that we're finding ways to praise children who are having more trouble being successful. We really want to make sure that that we're showing the children that every little step towards success that they're making is valuable. So we're just making sure that we're not providing the same praise to the same children in the same way every single time. We're sharing praise with all the children. And what about this? I will forget. It is very possible that we will forget because it can be hard to change new habits and learn new skills. But by attending this webinar, you've chosen to expand your skill set and do what's best for the development of the young children in your environment. So just by increasing our awareness of what kind of language we use and how it can impact young children, we are building our awareness and strengthening our skills. And remember, if we do forget, we do have ways to kind of go back and shift that language if we need to. So when we're thinking about shifting our language, again, to impact the behavior of infants and toddlers, we do need to take some action steps. We do need to make sure that we're doing some things to make sure that we're implementing this. And the first thing is to respond to behavior rather than reacting. So this requires us to remain calm, monitor our own internal states, so we can really effectively respond to the children's behaviors when they occur. So when that hitting does happen, when that pushing does happen, instead of just jumping in, even though we might feel scared or worried because we want to keep everyone safe, we really just want to take the moment to respond to that behavior. What is going on, and how can we address it? If we do react, we're more likely to use those short phrases such as "good job" or "stop that." This also requires that we plan ahead. So we need to think ahead about what behaviors we want to see occur in the classroom and how we can provide opportunities for these behaviors to occur. And we also might, before the behaviors occur, we want to consider what language we would use in various cases. And the last thing is it does require some time, energy, and effort to implement these things. And it's an investment, but it's an investment that can really positively shape the behavior in your environment. So this investment might look like developing those clear and concise tools, developing those picture examples, a deliberate teaching of each skill that we want children to master, taking the time to teach those skills. And it requires energy, definitely. It requires us to put forth the effort to anticipate, observe, and intervene with various behaviors throughout the day. So that might seem like a lot when we're thinking about our action steps, but let's consider the benefits of this. So when we do put that time, energy investment, we'll get greater benefits, such as connections between greater connections between teacher and child to child, because we really are looking at the children in a view of empathy and helping them understand their behaviors instead of just labeling children as bad or mean or just simply good, and that's all there is to them. Descriptive feedback increases positive behaviors. Again, we're really showing the children what they've done, describing what they've done, and how it was helping them be successful. It's also building the blocks. They're the foundational blocks for children to be more independent and needing your attention less. Now, that's not to say that if you do this, then you're off the hook. You don't need to address the children. And for infants and toddlers, they definitely will need your attention a lot. But we're building the foundation for children to build skills so they don't necessarily need your help or intervention every time they have a conflict. They're learning the skills on how to manage that on their own. It also can help build a calmer and safer environment. Children know what to expect. Children feel safe and welcome because you as a caregiver, you help them understand that they're free to explore, and you'll support them no matter what happens. A culture of success, we're really praising all those really great things that are happening all throughout the day in the classroom. And we are more likely to continue to see positive behaviors and success, the children's successes, when we acknowledge and celebrate them. So the more we pay attention to all these wonderful things that are happening, the more we're going to notice them in our environment. And that's going to feel really good when we can look around the room and instead of seeing all the behaviors that we want to stop, we can see all the behaviors that we can celebrate and feel positive about. So it's a very long list of benefits when we take the time to shift our language from simple to really descriptive and positive.
All right. I would like to thank everyone for taking the time out to listen to our first ever infant and toddler mental health webinar. It has been a pleasure for Melissa and myself to do this. This webinar has been brought to you by the Virginia Infant and Toddler Specialist Network. In order to receive your certificate of participation in this webinar, you must fill out the evaluation and either mail, fax, or email it to CDR. Once your evaluation has been received, a certificate will be sent to you. The contact information for CDR is located on the evaluation that was sent to you after you registered for this webinar. If you have any questions, please contact your regional infant and toddler specialist or consultant. Our next scheduled audio conference will be on November 13th, where we will take a look at emotional abuse in your infant and toddler classroom. Please visit the website, www.va-itsnetwork.org, often for information on registering for this event or any other future webinars that we do have. Also, please visit our website to register for upcoming 1, 2, 3 Read and STEFL training just on social and emotional development coming soon. Thank you again for taking the time to strengthen your skills and supporting the development of infants and toddlers. Thank you so much.